Why does Apple use a bitten apple for its logo? The popular belief is that it was inspired by the story of Newton having an apple fall on his head, which led to his discovery of gravity. The bite, they say, is simply to differentiate the apple from a cherry, as the shapes are similar. That's the common explanation for why Apple uses that logo. But many people don't know that there is actually another, very dramatic story behind the bitten apple. The story of Alan Turing. Alan Turing was a genius mathematician from England during World War II. Without him, we might not have computers today. He was a hero who helped win the war and save millions of lives. Uniquely, he didn't win the war with weapons. He won it with mathematics. How? During World War II, the Nazis were hard to defeat, partly because they had a technology called Enigma. Enigma was a machine that encrypted messages, making all of Germany's strategies unreadable when broadcast over the air. It was said that the Enigma code was impossible to crack, even if you tried for 1,000,000 years.
No, Enigma isn't difficult, it's impossible. The Americans, the Russians, the French, the Germans, everyone thinks Enigma is unbreakable.
This is where Alan Turing's genius lies. Using his mathematical logic, Alan Turing eventually created a machine to defeat Enigma. This machine is what we call the computer today, even though it still used mechanical parts at the time. Thanks to this Turing machine, the German strategy was uncovered and Germany lost the war. So, Alan Turing's service was immense. Not only did he help win the war, but he also became the father of the computer. Sadly, Alan Turing's death was tragic. He was found dead in his room, and next to him was a partially eaten apple. It's suspected that the apple had been poisoned. This apple became part of the Alan Turing legend, and many people believe that is the reason Apple uses the bitten apple logo to commemorate Alan Turing's service. Now guys, in this video we're going to discuss the full story and it's going to be exciting. We won't just cover Alan Turing's life, we'll also explain how Enigma works because it's a fascinating technology. Just imagine, there were no computers back then, yet Germany was already talking about the kind of data encryption we use for internet transactions today. And honestly, if it weren't for a crazy genius like Alan Turing, computer technology might not have been born. Even back then, Alan Turing was already talking about artificial intelligence before the computer even existed. So guys, watch this video all the way through because we're about to dive into a story that will blow your mind. The story of Alan Turing was made into the movie The Imitation Game. We talked in a previous popular episode about how the title The Imitation Game was taken from Alan Turing's 1950 paper where he introduced a game called The Imitation Game that spurred the development of AI. Feel free to watch that previous episode if you haven't yet. The movie The Imitation Game was actually adapted from this book, Alan Turing, The Enigma, which tells the story of how Alan Turing cracked Enigma. Without this story, Alan Turing would not have created the machine we call the computer today.
You're trying to build your universal machine?
Electrical brain. A digital computer.
To understand the story, you first need to know the background. The Battle of the Atlantic. This was a major part of World War II and the largest and longest naval battle in history, lasting from 1939 until the end of the war in 1945. It took place in the Atlantic Ocean between Britain and Nazi Germany. Why was the war fought at sea? At the time, Britain had a vulnerability. Its territory was surrounded by the sea. Automatically, all war logistics, including Allied troops from America and Canada who were helping them, had to be brought in via the Atlantic Ocean. Germany exploited this weakness. Germany was famous for its advanced and deadly submarines called U-boats. Almost no one survived a U-boat attack. They moved like ghosts. Suddenly, out of nowhere, their torpedoes would slaughter American and Canadian ships, preventing war supplies from reaching Britain. They were likened to a pack of hunting wolves constantly chasing and attacking anyone who crossed the Atlantic. More than 5,000 ships were sunk by U-boats.
Initially, Britain didn't know why the German attacks were so effective. But one day, a German submarine was captured and a machine was found inside. That machine was named Enigma. At first glance, it looked like a typewriter, but it was actually a message scrambler. When Germany was planning an attack, all their submarines communicated using this device. The machine had a unique mechanism. When you typed a letter on the machine, a different random letter would light up on the display. This random sequence of letters was then broadcast via radio using Morse code, so anyone listening couldn't read the message even if they intercepted it.
Welcome to Enigma. Details of every surprise attack, every secret convoy, and every U-boat in the bloody Atlantic go into that thing.
But we have an Enigma machine. Just put the intercepted messages back into the Enigma and you'll
But
get
it's
your
not that simple.
Now, Britain had the machine, but this is where Germany's cleverness came in. Enigma was designed so that the code could not be cracked even if the enemy possessed the machine. The machine had an incredibly complex mechanism. Even if you pressed the same letter repeatedly, the illuminated letter would never be the same. That's because every key was connected to a rotor that continuously spun to scramble the letter each time it was pressed. And it wasn't just one rotor, but 3 different rotors that spun alternately. You can't even imagine how many random letter possibilities could be generated just by those 3 rotors. And it didn't end there. There were actually 5 different rotors to choose from, and they could be arranged in different orders. Furthermore, on the front, there was also a plug board with cables that could be swapped to connect one letter to another, scrambling the letters generated by the rotors again. Here's the most astounding part. If you calculate all the possible settings of this machine using the permutation formula, the rotor arrangements, the plug board connections, and the initial rotor positions, do you know how many possibilities there were?
5 rotors, 10 plug board cables, that's
1 million.
1,000 million.
it's over 150 million possible settings.
159 with 18 zeros behind it. Possibilities.
150 million possibilities for setting up Enigma. So if you wanted to read an Enigma code with the machine, you had to find that one specific setting out of 150 million possibilities that Germany was using. How long do you think it would take to try them all, one by one? To illustrate, if 10 people tried one setting per minute and worked 24/7, it would take 20 million years to try all of Enigma's settings. 20 million years! Meanwhile, Germany changed the Enigma settings every day at midnight.
Now, the Germans switch settings every day promptly at midnight, which gives you exactly 18 hours every day. They crack the code before it changes and you start again.
Every day, German U-boats kept devastating enemy ships because of the Enigma code. That's why Britain recruited geniuses to break it, and Alan Turing was one of them. Alan Turing studied mathematics specifically at King's College, Cambridge. Here's what you need to know. Math isn't just about adding, multiplying, or subtracting. It's a higher level of logic used to unravel complex problems. Mathematicians are used to solving puzzles. making them the most likely to crack Enigma. Alan Turing's advantage over other mathematicians was his obsession with machines. Imagine, in Alan Turing's era, there were only manual mechanical machines. There was no Excel, Google, let alone ChatGPT. Back then, a computer wasn't a machine, but a person who was skilled at calculating. But Alan Turing was already thinking about how to create a machine that could think like a human. Long before he was recruited to break Enigma, he wrote a paper with a theory on how to create a machine that could think. He called it the Universal Computing Machine.
You theorized a machine that could solve any problem. It didn't just do one thing, it did everything. It wasn't just programmable, it was reprogrammable.
An electrical brain. A digital computer.
Today, we call it the computer. So, when he was recruited to crack Enigma, his first thought was how to turn his theory into a real machine. Because Enigma was impossible to crack except by a machine.
Our problem is that we're only using men to try to beat it. What if only a machine can defeat another machine?
A machine could only be beaten by a machine. What Alan Turing was doing met with opposition because it was considered crazy. While others were trying to break Enigma with their brains, Alan Turing was busy with his machine.
It seems that your great big expensive machine doesn't work.
You will never understand the importance of what I am creating here.
And using a huge amount of money from the British government to build it.
Well, each of his messages begins with the same 5 letters. C-I-L-L-Y.
It's impossible for Germans instructed to use 5 random letters at the start of every message.
But in the end, Alan Turing succeeded in proving that his machine worked. We won't go into detail about how the machine worked because it's too complicated. But the point is that the complexity of Enigma was finally solved because he and his team found a flaw after a linguistic and mathematical analysis. One of the flaws was that there was a recurring word in the Enigma code, and those words were hidden by Germany through weather reports broadcast 6 times every hour. This key word was then input into Alan Turing's machine, and the machine automatically worked to find the Enigma settings. When the settings were input back into the Enigma machine, the original German message was revealed. Thanks to this success, American and Canadian ships could now be saved from the ruthlessness of German submarines because they were warned by the cracked Enigma messages. Alan Turing's machine was replicated and ultimately contributed to winning the war and saving millions of lives from German attacks. Over time, the Turing machine was continuously perfected until it became the prototype of the computer we have today. In May 1945, all of Europe cheered the Allied victory over Nazi Germany. Alan Turing certainly deserved the title of hero for his contribution. Unfortunately, he never appeared in public. Why? Because Alan Turing and his team worked under an oath of secrecy, never to reveal that Enigma had been broken. To make matters worse, Alan Turing had a private life that was considered a crime. He was homosexual. Instead of being hailed as a hero, he was targeted by the police. Initially suspected of concealing something, he was eventually arrested for having a relationship with a man, because homosexuality was strictly forbidden in England at the time. He was forced to choose between prison or hormone therapy, and he chose the therapy. His health deteriorated after that. In June 1954, he was found dead in his room. Cyanide was found in his body, and a half-eaten apple was found beside him. The official report was death by suicide, but some suspect he was murdered because he held too many secrets. Alan Turing's apple became the symbol that people often associate with the Apple logo today. even though it's technically unrelated. Alan Turing's secret of cracking Enigma was not known for 50 years until it was finally revealed. Sadly, Alan Turing was already deceased, so in 2013, the British monarchy officially apologized for the unjust treatment of Turing in the past.